The Return of the Ashes. A horror revenge story. Rain had a strange way of bringing back memories. Every time thunder echoed across the sky, I could still smell smoke, burning wood, and hear the screams that had haunted me for 20 years. People said my family's death was a tragic accident. I knew they were lying, because before the flames consumed our home, my father grabbed my hand with his last breath and whispered 5 words that changed my life forever. Never trust anyone, find the truth. Those words became the only reason I stayed alive. For 20 years, I buried my past. I left my hometown, changed my life, built walls around my heart. I never married. I never made close friends. Because every time someone got close to me, I remembered my father's warning. Trust no one. Then, on a cold October evening, everything changed. I came home after another long day at work. A small brown package was sitting outside my apartment door. There was no stamp, no return address, no sender's name, only my apartment number written in black ink. A chill ran down my spine. I slowly carried it inside. My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside were only 3 objects. An old photograph of my childhood home before it burned down, a rusty black key, and a folded piece of paper. I unfolded the note. Only one sentence was written. The truth is still buried in the basement. My heart nearly stopped. Nobody knew about the basement. Nobody. I had never told anyone. Someone wasn't just watching me. Someone knew the truth. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside my apartment made me jump. At exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard 3 slow knocks on my front door. Knock! 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 I grabbed a kitchen knife and walked toward the entrance. My breathing became heavier with every step. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. I slowly opened the door. The hallway was completely empty, but lying on the floor was another note. It read, "Go home, before it's too late." The handwriting matched the first letter. The next morning, I packed a small bag and started driving back to the town I had escaped 20 years earlier. The closer I got, the darker the sky became. The streets looked frozen in time. Old buildings, empty sidewalks, silent faces staring through dusty windows. People recognized me immediately. Some looked terrified. Others quickly closed their doors. It was as if they had been expecting me. I finally reached the ruins of my childhood home. The burned walls still stood like black skeletons against the gray sky. Nature had almost swallowed the place. Yet something felt terribly wrong. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt alive. A cold wind whispered through the broken windows. For a brief moment, I thought I heard someone whisper my name. I turned around. No one. Only silence. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old black key. Behind the collapsed kitchen, hidden beneath vines and broken wood, I found the basement door. The rusty lock was still there. My hands shook as I inserted the key. Click! The lock opened. A deep creaking sound echoed through the darkness below. Cold air rushed out of the basement. It smelled like smoke. And something else. Something rotten. I switched on my flashlight and slowly walked down the old wooden stairs. Every step groaned beneath my feet. The darkness swallowed the light around me. Cobwebs covered every corner. Dust floated through the air like tiny ghosts. At the end of the basement stood a large metal chest. Its surface was covered in rust. Someone had scratched strange symbols into the lid. I knelt beside it. For a moment, I hesitated, because deep inside I knew whatever was inside that chest would change my life forever. My fingers trembled as I reached for the rusty lock on the metal chest. For a moment, I thought about walking away. Maybe some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. But then I remembered my father's final words. Never trust anyone, find the truth. Taking a deep breath, I lifted the heavy lid. It opened with a loud metallic screech that echoed through the basement. Inside, there were no jewels, no money, no family heirlooms, only a dusty videotape, several old documents tied together with faded red string, and a silver pocket watch that belonged to my father. I picked up the watch. It had stopped ticking at exactly 11:47 p.m., the exact time our house burned down. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. Someone had placed these items here after the fire. Someone wanted me to find them. As I searched deeper inside the chest, I discovered another folded envelope. Written across the front were 3 terrifying words. Don't trust Michael. My heart skipped a beat. Michael! He was my father's closest friend. The man who had rescued me from the burning house 20 years ago. The man who raised me after my parents died. The only person I had ever trusted. No! I whispered. It can't be! Suddenly, footsteps echoed above me. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Someone was walking through the ruined house. I immediately switched off my flashlight. The basement fell into complete darkness. My heartbeat thundered inside my chest. The footsteps stopped directly above my head. Then, silence. A full minute passed. Nothing. Just as I was about to breathe again, someone whispered from the top of the basement stairs. You should have stayed away. The voice was deep, cold, almost emotionless. I grabbed an old iron pipe lying on the floor and slowly moved toward the staircase. Every step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the top, no one was there. The ruined house was empty, or so it seemed. As I stepped outside, I noticed something strange. Fresh footprints, large boot prints in the wet mud. Someone had been there only seconds earlier. I followed them into the nearby forest. The footprints continued for several hundred feet. Then, they suddenly disappeared. No return tracks. No side tracks. Nothing. It was as if the person had simply vanished into thin air. A sharp cracking sound came from behind me. I spun around. Standing between the trees, about 50 yards away, was a tall man wearing a long black coat. His face was hidden beneath a dark hood. He didn't move. He simply stood there, watching me. I shouted, "Who are you?" No answer. I took a step toward him. He slowly raised one hand, pointing toward the old cemetery on the hill. Then, without making a single sound, he disappeared behind the trees. When I reached the exact spot where he had been standing, there was no one there, only another folded note lying on the ground. I opened it. The words made my blood run cold. The fire wasn't meant to kill your family. It was meant to kill you. At that moment, I realized something far more terrifying than I had ever imagined. For 20 years, I hadn't been searching for the truth. The truth had been searching for me. The note slipped from my trembling fingers and landed on the wet ground. The fire wasn't meant to kill your family. It was meant to kill you. I read the words again, and again. Nothing made sense. Why would anyone want to kill a 10-year-old boy? Who was I? What had my father been protecting? The questions haunted my mind as I drove toward the only person who might have the answers. Michael, the man who had raised me after the fire. The man the mysterious letter had warned me never to trust. His cabin stood alone at the edge of Blackwood Forest, exactly as I remembered it. The wooden porch creaked beneath my feet as I walked to the front door. Before I could knock, the door slowly opened. Michael was standing there. His hair had turned gray. Deep lines covered his face. But the moment he saw me, the color drained from his cheeks. "You came back," he whispered. "I had to." He looked past me, scanning the empty road as if expecting someone else. Then he quickly pulled me inside and locked every door and window. Without saying a word, he closed the curtains. Only then did he look at me again. "You shouldn't have returned," he said quietly. "They're watching." "Who?" Instead of answering, Michael walked to an old bookshelf and removed a faded photograph. It showed my parents standing beside 3 other people. One of them was Michael. The second was a woman I had never seen before. The third man's face had been burned away, almost deliberately. "Who is he?" I asked. Michael's hands began to shake. He was never supposed to exist. Before I could ask another question, someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. The exact same pattern I had heard outside my apartment. Michael froze. His face turned pale. "They found you." He grabbed my arm and dragged me toward the basement beneath the cabin. "Hurry!" As we rushed downstairs, the front door exploded open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the house. Someone had broken in. Michael switched off the basement light. We stood in complete darkness, barely breathing. The footsteps moved slowly across the floor above us. Drawers opened. Furniture crashed. Glass shattered. Whoever had entered wasn't looking for money. They were looking for me. Then, everything went silent. For nearly 2 minutes, neither of us moved. Finally, Michael whispered, "They've been hunting your family for more than 20 years." My heart pounded. "Who are they?" He looked directly into my eyes. "They call themselves the Ash Society. According to Michael, the Ash Society wasn't just a group of criminals. They were wealthy businessmen, corrupt politicians, judges, and police officers who secretly controlled the town. Anyone who discovered their crimes disappeared without a trace. My father had uncovered evidence that connected every one of them to murders, illegal land deals, and millions of dollars in stolen money. The night our house burned, they came to destroy the evidence. But something went wrong. My father managed to hide the most important proof before the fire spread. "And where is it now?" I asked. Michael's voice dropped to a whisper. "I don't know." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed upstairs. The basement door slowly began to open. Someone was coming down. "Step! Step! Step!" Michael reached into his pocket and handed me a small brass key. "If anything happens to me," he whispered, "go to St. Mary's Cemetery." "What?" "Grave number 17. "Why?" "You'll find your father's final secret." The footsteps were getting closer. 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 A dark shadow appeared at the bottom of the stairs. The stranger lifted a flashlight. Its beam swept across the basement, until it stopped directly on our faces. The flashlight froze on our faces. For a split second, no one moved. No one even breathed. Then Michael shoved me backward and shouted, "Run!" A deafening gunshot echoed through the basement. The bullet slammed into the wall only inches from my head. I stumbled through the darkness while Michael grabbed a rusted shovel and swung it at the masked intruder. The flashlight crashed to the floor, spinning wildly. Shadows danced across the basement walls. The stranger recovered quickly. He was taller than Michael, dressed entirely in black, with leather gloves hiding every inch of his skin. Before I could reach them, the man pulled out a hunting knife. Michael blocked the attack with the shovel, but the force knocked him to the ground. "Go!" Michael screamed. "Don't let them find Grave 17. Tears filled my eyes. "I can't leave you." "You must." Another gunshot exploded. This time the bullet shattered the basement light, throwing everything into complete darkness. Using the confusion, I found the back tunnel Michael had once shown me years ago. It led outside into the forest. Branches whipped against my face as I ran through the trees. Behind me, I could hear footsteps. They weren't rushing. They were following me, like hunters chasing wounded prey. For nearly 20 minutes I ran without stopping. Finally, I reached the old cemetery on the hill. The iron gates stood half open, creaking in the cold wind. Rows of weathered gravestones disappeared into the thick fog. The silence felt unnatural. Even the birds had stopped singing. I switched on my flashlight and searched for the numbers carved into the graves. 9, 12, 15. Finally, 17. It belonged to a woman named Evelyn Carter. I had never heard that name before. Kneeling beside the grave, I noticed something unusual. The soil looked freshly disturbed. Someone had been there recently. Remembering the brass key Michael had given me, I searched around the headstone. Near its base, hidden beneath loose stones, I discovered a tiny metal lock. The key fit perfectly. With a soft click, a hidden compartment opened inside the stone. There was a small waterproof box. Inside the box were an old leather journal, a faded map of Blackwood Forest, and a photograph. The photograph showed my parents standing beside a little girl. She looked about 7 years old. I stared at the picture in confusion. I had never seen her before. Written on the back were 6 chilling words. "Protect Emily at all costs." Emily? Who was Emily? Why had my parents hidden her existence? Before I could open the journal, a cold voice echoed through the cemetery. "You finally found it." I slowly turned around. Standing between the graves was the man in the black coat. This time his hood slipped back, just enough for me to see part of his face. A long scar ran from his forehead to his jaw. His cold blue eyes never blinked. He smiled. "You look exactly like your father." My heart pounded. "You murdered my family." The stranger laughed. "No." He took another step closer. "I only finished what someone else started." Then he pulled a pistol from his coat and pointed it directly at my chest. The barrel of the pistol was pointed straight at my heart. For a moment, time stood still. The cold wind swept through the cemetery, carrying dead leaves across the graves. The man with the scar smiled. "There are only 2 kinds of people," he said calmly. "Those who obey, and those who disappear." His fingers slowly tightened around the trigger. Bang! A gunshot shattered the silence. I closed my eyes, waiting for the pain. But it never came. Instead, the scar-faced man staggered backward. A bullet had struck his shoulder. He cursed and disappeared into the thick fog. I turned around in shock. Standing near the cemetery gate was an elderly woman holding an old hunting rifle. Her silver hair flowed in the wind. Her eyes were sharp and fearless. "Don't just stand there," she shouted. "Run!" Without asking questions, I grabbed the leather journal, the map, and the photograph, then followed her through the woods. After nearly 15 minutes, we reached a small cabin hidden deep inside Blackwood Forest. The woman quickly locked every door and covered the windows. Only then did she finally speak. "My name is Margaret. I was your mother's closest friend." I stared at her in disbelief. "My mother never mentioned you." "She couldn't, because if she had, they would have killed me too." Margaret placed the old journal on the table. "It has finally returned to the person who was meant to read it." With trembling hands, I opened the first page. The handwriting belonged to my father. The first sentence made my blood run cold. "If you are reading this, it means I failed to protect both of my children." I stopped breathing. Both of my children? I was an only child, or so I had believed. Margaret looked into my eyes. "No! You have a younger sister." My entire world collapsed. "What?" "Her name is Emily, the little girl in that photograph. Your parents secretly sent her away only hours before the fire. They knew someone was coming. They believed they could save at least one child." Tears filled my eyes. "For 20 years, I thought I was alone." Margaret nodded sadly. "They wanted you to believe that. They erased every record of Emily's existence. They changed her name. They hid her in another country. The Ash Society has been searching for her ever since. Because your father entrusted her with something more valuable than money." I swallowed hard. "What?" Margaret whispered. "The final piece of evidence." Before I could ask another question, the lights inside the cabin suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, a red laser that appeared on Margaret's forehead. She looked at me with terrified eyes. "They found us!" A deafening gunshot echoed through the cabin, and the window exploded into thousands of pieces. The window exploded into thousands of sharp pieces. Glass flew across the cabin. Margaret threw herself to the floor just as another bullet ripped through the wooden wall behind her. "Get down!" she screamed. I dove behind an old table, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst from my chest. Outside, at least 4 black SUVs surrounded the cabin. Men dressed in black tactical gear slowly stepped out. Each one wore a black mask with a silver ash symbol painted across it. The Ash Society had found us. A voice echoed through a loudspeaker. "Hand over the journal, and we'll let you live." Margaret looked at me and shook her head. "They're lying. They never leave witnesses." Another volley of bullets tore through the cabin. Wood splintered everywhere. Margaret crawled toward an old fireplace and pulled a hidden lever beneath the bricks. With a loud rumble, part of the floor slid open. A secret tunnel. "Go," she ordered. "There isn't enough time." "What about you?" "I'll slow them down." "I'm not leaving you." She grabbed my shoulders. "Listen to me. For 20 years, your parents sacrificed everything to keep you alive. Don't waste that sacrifice." She placed a small silver cross into my hand. "It belonged to your mother. Never lose it." Heavy footsteps pounded onto the front porch. The attackers were inside the cabin. Margaret pushed me toward the tunnel. "Go now!" Reluctantly, I climbed into the narrow passage. The stone door closed above me. Everything became silent, except for the distant sound of gunfire. Then, Margaret screamed. The scream echoed through the tunnel. Then suddenly, nothing. Only silence. Tears rolled down my face, but I kept moving. The tunnel stretched beneath the forest for what felt like miles. Finally, I reached a rusty metal ladder leading upward. I pushed open a hidden hatch. Fresh air rushed into my lungs. I had emerged inside an abandoned church. Moonlight filtered through the broken stained glass windows. The church had clearly been abandoned for decades, yet someone had recently been there. Fresh candle wax covered the altar. Footprints marked the dusty floor. On the altar lay an old envelope. My name was written across it. I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from my father. It read, "If you have reached this church, then Margaret has most likely sacrificed herself to save you." Forgive me for placing this burden on your shoulders. The truth is larger than you can imagine. The Ash Society doesn't only control this town, it controls people far beyond it. Trust no one except the person whose name is hidden inside the silver cross. My hands trembled. I looked down at the cross Margaret had given me. At first, it appeared ordinary. Then I noticed a tiny latch. Carefully I opened it. Inside was a tightly folded strip of paper. Only one name was written on it. Emily. My sister wasn't just alive. She was the only person my father had trusted with the final secret. At that very moment, the church bell rang by itself. Once, twice, 3 times. I slowly turned toward the entrance. A dark figure stood in the doorway. Rain poured behind him. He removed his hood. It wasn't the Scarface man. It was Michael, covered in blood, barely able to stand. He looked into my eyes and whispered, "I know where Emily is." Before he could say another word, a sniper's bullet tore through his chest. Michael collapsed onto the cold stone floor. Blood spread beneath him as the church echoed with the sound of the sniper shot. I rushed toward him. "Michael!" He grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. His breathing was shallow. "They found me. Don't talk. I'll get help." He shook his head. "No, there isn't time." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, weathered notebook wrapped in plastic. "Your father gave me this the night of the fire." My hands trembled as I took it. "It's yours now." I looked into his fading eyes. "Were you really protecting me all these years?" A tear rolled down Michael's cheek. "I made one mistake. I couldn't save your parents. But I promised your father I would save you." His grip slowly loosened. With his final breath, he whispered, "Find Emily." Then, he was gone. For a moment, I couldn't move. The man I had doubted, the man I thought had betrayed my family, had spent 20 years risking his life to protect me. Suddenly, footsteps echoed outside the church. The Ash Society had arrived. I grabbed the notebook and escaped through a broken side door just seconds before armed men stormed inside. I ran through the rain until I reached an abandoned train station hidden beyond the forest. There, under the dim light of a broken platform lamp, I opened the notebook. Inside were pages of handwritten notes from my father. Most of them described secret meetings, hidden accounts, and names of powerful people connected to the Ash Society. But the final page was different. It contained only a photograph and a short message. The photograph showed a young woman in her 20s standing beside a lighthouse overlooking the ocean. On the back, my father had written, "Emily, if you're reading this, never return to Blackwood." Beneath it was an address, Ravens Point Lighthouse, nearly 800 miles away. At last, I knew where my sister was hiding. As dawn broke, I boarded the first train heading toward the coast. For the first time in 20 years, I wasn't chasing the past. I was chasing my family. But I wasn't the only one. Far away, inside a luxurious mansion, the leader of the Ash Society watched security footage of me boarding the train. He smiled coldly. "Prepare the team," he ordered. "We're going to Ravens Point." One of his men hesitated. "Sir, what if the siblings discover the truth?" The old man slowly stood and walked toward the fireplace. His face remained hidden in the shadows. Then he spoke words that sent a chill through the room. "They must never learn that I am their grandfather." The room fell silent. The greatest secret of all had finally begun to reveal itself. The train raced through the night. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Michael's final moments. His sacrifice, my parents' deaths, Margaret's courage. Everything had led to one destination, Ravens Point Lighthouse. By sunrise, the train reached the small coastal town. The air smelled of salt and rain. The sea crashed violently against the cliffs. Above them stood the old lighthouse, lonely and silent. It looked abandoned, but something told me someone was still living there. As I climbed the winding path, I noticed fresh footprints in the mud. Someone had arrived before me. I reached the wooden door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Slowly, I pushed the door open. The lighthouse was quiet. Dust floated through the air. Books covered the shelves. Family photographs lined one wall. Then I stopped. One photograph stole my breath. It showed my parents, holding a little girl, standing beside a young woman. The little girl was Emily. The young woman looked exactly like my mother. Before I could understand what I was seeing, a voice came from behind me. "I've been waiting for you." I turned slowly. A young woman stood at the top of a staircase. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You really came?" My voice trembled. "Emily!" She nodded. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she ran toward me. We embraced, and for the first time in 20 years, I felt like I had family again. But the reunion was short-lived. Emily stepped back and looked terrified. "You shouldn't have come here. They know you're here." "What do you mean?" She opened a hidden drawer beneath the staircase and removed a small metal case. Inside was a black flash drive. "This is what Father died protecting. It contains every secret, the names of everyone in the Ash Society, every murder, every bribe, every stolen fortune. It's enough to destroy them forever." Before I could respond, the lighthouse lights suddenly went out. Darkness filled the room. Outside, several black helicopters appeared over the ocean. Dozens of black SUVs surrounded the cliffs below. Red laser sights swept across the lighthouse windows. Emily's face turned pale. "They found us!" A powerful voice echoed from loudspeakers outside. "There is nowhere left to run. Hand over the flash drive, or your sister dies." I looked out the window. Standing beside the lead helicopter was the scar-faced man. But he wasn't alone. An elderly man in an expensive black coat stepped forward. His silver hair moved in the ocean wind. His eyes locked onto mine. Then he smiled. "Hello, grandson." My blood froze. The mysterious leader of the Ash Society. The man responsible for my parents' deaths. The man who had hunted us for 20 years. Was my own grandfather. And this time, he had come to finish what he started. The word echoed through my mind. "Grandson." For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. The old man standing outside the lighthouse looked at me with calm, emotionless eyes. He wasn't smiling because he was happy to see me. He was smiling because he believed he had already won. Emily grabbed my arm. "Don't listen to him," she whispered. "He knows exactly how to manipulate people." The old man slowly removed his gloves and raised his hands. "I know you hate me," he called out. "But before you judge me, you deserve to know the truth." The scar-faced man stepped forward with a loudspeaker. "If you surrender peacefully, no one else has to die." I looked at Emily. "What do we do?" She opened the black metal case again and handed me the flash drive. "If anything happens to me, get this to the police." I shook my head. "No. We finish this together." Suddenly, a loud explosion shook the lighthouse. The front door burst open. Smoke filled the first floor. Armed men stormed inside from every direction. "Run!" Emily shouted. We raced up the narrow spiral staircase toward the lantern room at the top. Bullets tore through the wooden walls behind us. Glass shattered around our feet. When we reached the top, there was nowhere else to go. Only the lighthouse balcony overlooked the crashing sea below. The old man slowly climbed the stairs. This time he came alone. No guards. No weapons in his hands. Only a small leather folder. "I never wanted your parents to die," he said quietly. "They forced my hand." "Liar!" I shouted. His eyes filled with something that almost looked like regret. "Your father discovered our organization. He refused to join us. He planned to expose everything. If he had succeeded, hundreds of powerful people would have fallen. So you murdered him?" Emily cried. The old man lowered his head. "I gave the order." Silence filled the room. For the first time in 20 years, the truth had finally been spoken aloud. "You destroyed our family," I whispered. "No," he replied. "I protected Mina." He slowly opened the leather folder. Inside were old photographs. One showed him holding me as a baby. Another showed Emily sitting on his lap as a little girl. Tears rolled down his face. "I loved you both." Emily's voice turned cold. "If you loved us, why did you hunt us?" His expression changed instantly. The kindness vanished. His face became hard. "Because love makes people weak, and weakness destroys empires." He reached inside his coat and pulled out a pistol. "I won't allow your father to destroy everything I built." He aimed the gun at the flash drive in my hand. "Give it to me." I looked at Emily. She nodded once, without hesitation. I pulled the flash drive from the case, opened the lighthouse window, and threw it into the raging ocean below. The old man's face twisted with rage. "No!" He lunged toward the window. At that exact moment, a deafening sound echoed across the sky. 3 military helicopters appeared over the coastline. Searchlights lit up the cliffs. A voice boomed through loudspeakers. "Federal agents, drop your weapons immediately." The old man stared at the helicopters in disbelief. Then he slowly smiled. "You think you've won?" He pressed a small remote hidden inside his pocket. A red light began flashing beneath the lighthouse floor. Emily's eyes widened in horror. "The lighthouse! It's rigged with explosives." A countdown timer appeared on a nearby control panel. 5 o'clock. 5 minutes remained before the entire lighthouse, and everyone inside it, would be reduced to ashes. The countdown flashed in bright red. For 59, 458. For 57. A deafening alarm echoed through the lighthouse. The walls trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. Emily looked at me with fear in her eyes. "We have to leave. Now." But my grandfather didn't move. He stood calmly in the center of the room, watching the timer as if he had planned this moment for years. "If I can't protect the Ash Society," he said, "then no one will." Outside, federal helicopters circled the lighthouse while agents shouted through loudspeakers. "This is your final warning. Evacuate immediately." The scar-faced man grabbed my grandfather's arm. "Sir, we have to go." My grandfather smiled coldly. "You may leave. I'm staying." The scar-faced man hesitated only for a second before running downstairs with the remaining members of the Ash Society. Within moments, the lighthouse was almost empty. Only 3 people remained. Me, Emily, and the man responsible for destroying our family. The timer reached 3:42. Emily pulled my arm. "Please, let's go." But I couldn't. Not until I had one final answer. I stepped closer to my grandfather. "Why? Why did you really order the fire?" For the first time, his eyes filled with regret. "Because your father found something even I feared." He discovered that the Ash Society wasn't just a criminal organization. It had members inside governments, courts, and international corporations. If those secrets had been exposed, countries would have fallen. "So you murdered innocent people to protect criminals?" "I sacrificed a few to protect millions." I shook my head. "No. You destroyed everything." The timer continued. 2:31. Suddenly, Emily reached into her jacket. "I never threw away the evidence." She smiled through her tears. From a hidden pocket, she pulled out a second flash drive. The one I had thrown into the ocean had been a fake. My grandfather's face turned pale. "You?" Emily nodded. "I knew you'd search me, so I made a copy." His calm expression disappeared. For the first time in his life, he looked afraid. He rushed toward Emily. Before he could reach her, I stepped between them. We struggled violently. He fired his pistol. The bullet grazed my shoulder. Pain shot through my arm. Ignoring the wound, I tackled him to the floor. The gun slid across the room. The timer flashed. 1:18. Emily grabbed the real flash drive and ran toward the emergency exit. I tried to follow, but my grandfather wrapped both arms around me. "No! If I die, you die with me." The lighthouse shook violently. Cracks spread across the walls. Outside, federal agents reached the entrance. They shouted for us to jump. Emily turned back, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not leaving you." "You have to," I yelled. "Go." She hesitated, then finally climbed onto the rescue helicopter ladder hanging beside the lighthouse balcony. Federal agents pulled her to safety. Only seconds remained. 0:27. My grandfather looked into my eyes. "You still don't understand. Power always survives." I smiled despite the pain. "Not this time." With every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed him backward. He lost his balance. His eyes widened. For the first time, he was afraid. He fell through the shattered lighthouse window into the darkness below. I jumped toward the helicopter ladder at the very last second. Strong hands grabbed my arms and pulled me upward. As the helicopter climbed into the stormy sky, the countdown reached midnight. A blinding explosion tore through the lighthouse. Flames erupted hundreds of feet into the air. The tower collapsed into the crashing waves below. The headquarters of the Ash Society was gone forever. But as I watched the burning ruins disappear beneath the sea, a question echoed inside my mind. Was it really over? Or had the nightmare only just begun? The explosion lit up the night sky. From the helicopter, I watched the lighthouse collapse into the raging sea. For the first time in 20 years, I believed it was over. The Ash Society was destroyed. My grandfather was dead. Emily was safe. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. 3 days later, I woke up in a military hospital. A bandage covered my shoulder where the bullet had grazed me. Emily was sitting beside my bed, asleep in a chair. When she noticed I was awake, tears filled her eyes. "You made it," she whispered. I smiled weakly. "So did you." A federal agent entered the room, carrying a thick evidence box. "My name is Agent Daniel Brooks. The information on the flash drive has already led to more than 80 arrests. Politicians, judges, businessmen, they're all falling. For the first time, justice was finally catching up with the people who had destroyed my family." But then Agent Brooks placed another item on the table. It was a burned leather notebook. "We found this floating near the lighthouse. It belonged to your grandfather." Inside the notebook were handwritten names, bank accounts, hidden locations, and one page that had been carefully folded. Across the top were 3 chilling words: Project Phoenix. Below it was a list of names. Every member of the Ash Society had a status beside their name. Most were marked deceased, arrested, missing. But one name wasn't marked at all. Instead, beside it were the words, the founder. No photograph, no identity, only a symbol, a black phoenix rising from the ashes. I looked at Agent Brooks. "Who is this?" He shook his head. "We don't know. We've searched every database. That person doesn't officially exist." At that moment, Emily reached into the notebook. Something small fell onto the bed. It was a memory card, hidden inside the notebook spine. We inserted it into a laptop. A video began to play. The screen showed my grandfather sitting alone in a dark room. He looked directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, then I am dead." He smiled sadly. "You believe I created the Ash Society. I didn't. I only inherited it." He leaned closer. "The real leader has always remained hidden. The founder controls everything. Governments, corporations, even the people investigating us." My heart sank. Everything we had fought for, everything we had survived, had only exposed one piece of a much larger conspiracy. The video suddenly glitched. Static filled the screen. Then another face appeared for less than 2 seconds. A man wearing a black mask shaped like a phoenix. Before the image disappeared, he spoke just 6 words. "The ashes always rise again." The screen went black. The hospital room fell silent. Emily looked at me. "What do we do now?" I closed the laptop. For 20 years, I had searched for the people who destroyed my family. Now, I had discovered something even more terrifying. The Ash Society was never the true enemy. It had only been a branch of an organization far darker. I stood beside the hospital window and looked toward the stormy horizon. "They started the story," I said quietly, "but we'll finish it. Some nightmares end with revenge. Others have only just begun." 6 months passed. The world believed the nightmare was over. News channels called it the biggest criminal conspiracy in modern history. Hundreds of members of the Ash Society had been arrested. Millions of dollars in stolen assets had been recovered. Emily and I disappeared from the public eye. We moved to a quiet town under new identities. For the first time in our lives, we tried to live like a normal family. But peace never lasts forever. One cold autumn evening, I returned home to find the front door slightly open. I was certain I had locked it. Every light inside the house was off. "Emily!" I called. No answer. My heartbeat quickened. I stepped inside carefully. The living room was empty. The kitchen was silent. Then I noticed something on the dining table. A single black envelope. No stamp. No name. Only one symbol. A black phoenix. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. "You destroyed the Ash Society, but you were never the target. Your father stole something that still belongs to us. Return it within 72 hours, or your sister dies." My blood turned cold. "Emily!" I ran upstairs. Every room was empty. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered immediately. A distorted voice whispered, "Look outside." I rushed to the window. Across the street, a black sedan was parked beneath a dead oak tree. The headlights switched on. For a brief second, I saw Emily sitting in the back seat. Her hands were tied. She looked directly at me. Then the car slowly drove away into the darkness. "No!" I shouted as I ran outside, but by the time I reached the road, the sedan had vanished. Only one thing remained: a silver coin lying in the middle of the street. On one side was the same black phoenix. On the other side were 4 engraved words. "The game begins again." I clenched the coin tightly in my hand. I finally understood. The Ash Society had been defeated, but the people behind it had never stopped watching. Somewhere, someone had been waiting for this moment, waiting for me to believe the fight was over. I looked up at the dark sky. The wind carried the distant sound of thunder. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a far more dangerous one. And this time, I wasn't fighting for revenge. I was fighting to save the only family I had left. The silver coin felt ice cold in my hand. On its surface, the black phoenix seemed almost alive, its wings spread wide as if rising from the ashes. I wasn't chasing revenge anymore. Now, I was racing against time. 72 hours. That was all they had given me to save Emily. I drove back to the abandoned headquarters where the federal agents had stored everything recovered from the Ash Society. Agent Daniel Brooks met me at the entrance. The moment he saw the black coin, the color drained from his face. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "They kidnapped Emily." Brooks remained silent for several seconds. Finally, he whispered, "I was afraid this day would come. You know who they are?" He nodded. "The Black Phoenix isn't just an organization. It's a legend. For over 100 years, powerful families have secretly controlled governments, banks, and criminal empires. The Ash Society worked for them. They were only pawns." I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. So my grandfather was never the real leader. No, he answered to someone else. Brooks walked toward a locked evidence room. Using his security card, he opened a steel vault. Inside was a wooden box recovered from the lighthouse ruins. We couldn't open it. There was no key. I remembered the old silver cross my mother had left me. The cross contained a tiny hidden key. With trembling hands, I removed it and inserted it into the box. Click! The lid slowly opened. Inside lay a bundle of faded documents, a map, and a sealed letter addressed to me. The handwriting belonged to my father. I opened it carefully. "My son, if you are reading this, then the Black Phoenix has finally revealed itself. The evidence you have found is not enough to destroy them. There is one final archive hidden beneath Blackwood Manor. That archive contains every secret they have spent a century protecting. Guard it with your life, but never go there alone." Blackwood Manor. The name sent chills through my body. It was the oldest mansion in the county, abandoned for decades. According to local legends, anyone who entered after sunset never came back. Before I could say another word, every light inside the evidence room suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Emergency alarms echoed through the building. Red lights began flashing. Brooks drew his pistol. "They're here." A loud explosion shook the entire building. The front entrance collapsed. Masked gunmen flooded into the hallway. Their uniforms were different from the Ash Society. Each one wore a Black Phoenix emblem on the chest. One of them stepped forward and spoke through a voice changer. "Bring us the journal, or your sister dies before sunrise." The hunt had begun again. But this time, the enemy was stronger, richer, and far more ruthless than anything I had faced before. The explosion shook the entire evidence building. Smoke filled the corridors as alarms screamed from every direction. Agent Brooks fired 2 quick shots. The masked gunman returned fire immediately. Bullets tore through the walls. "Go!" Brooks shouted. "I'll hold them off." Without wasting another second, I grabbed my father's letter, the old map, and the wooden box before escaping through an emergency exit. Outside, the rain poured heavily. Police sirens echoed in the distance. But I knew they would arrive too late. The Black Phoenix never stayed in one place for long. An hour later, I found myself standing before the rusted iron gates of Blackwood Manor. The mansion looked even more terrifying than the stories described. Its broken windows resembled empty eyes. Dead vines covered the stone walls. The ancient clock tower had stopped at exactly 11:47 p.m., the same time my childhood home had burned down. It couldn't be a coincidence. I pushed the gate open. It groaned loudly as though warning me to turn back. But I couldn't. Emily's life depended on what I found inside. As I stepped onto the overgrown path, an icy wind swept across the estate. Somewhere in the darkness, a little girl's laughter echoed through the trees. I froze. It sounded almost identical to my sister's laugh when she was a child. "Emily!" I whispered. No answer. Only silence. The front door of the manor stood slightly open. Inside, everything was covered in dust. Portraits of stern-faced men and women lined the walls. As I walked deeper into the mansion, my flashlight landed on a massive family portrait. My heart nearly stopped. The man standing in the center was my grandfather. Beside him stood my father, and next to my father was a young boy, a boy who looked exactly like me. But the date beneath the portrait read 1978. I wasn't even born until years later. Confused, I looked closer. The boy wasn't me. He was my father. The resemblance was unbelievable. Before I could understand the painting, I heard footsteps above me. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Someone else was inside the manor. I quietly followed the sound upstairs. It led me to a locked library. The old brass key from my childhood home fit perfectly into the lock. The door slowly opened. Thousands of ancient books covered the walls. In the center of the room stood an enormous wooden desk. On it rested an antique projector. As soon as I touched it, the projector switched on by itself. A film began to play across the wall. The footage was black and white. It showed a secret meeting held inside this very manor decades ago. Around a long table sat 12 powerful men. Each wore a black phoenix ring. Then the camera turned, and my blood ran cold. One of the men at the table was my grandfather, but sitting at the head of the table was someone I recognized instantly. It was Agent Daniel Brooks. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The man I trusted, the man who had helped me, had been connected to the Black Phoenix all along. At that exact moment, a slow clap echoed behind me. I turned around. Agent Brooks stepped out of the shadows. He lowered his pistol and smiled. "I'm sorry," he said calmly, "but this was the only way to lead us here." The library doors slammed shut behind me. Heavy locks clicked into place. I was trapped, and for the second time in my life, the person I trusted most had betrayed me. The library doors slammed shut behind me. Heavy iron locks clicked into place. I was trapped. Agent Daniel Brooks stood only a few feet away, his pistol hanging loosely at his side. For several long seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, he sighed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I truly hoped you would never find this place." My fists tightened. "You lied to me. You used me. You let innocent people die." Brooks lowered his head. "Yes, but not for the reasons you think." I laughed bitterly. "There's always a reason, isn't there?" He slowly walked toward the ancient projector and switched it off. The room fell into silence. "My father worked for the Black Phoenix," he began. "I grew up believing they were protecting the world. But when I discovered the truth, I tried to leave. They murdered my wife. They took my son. And they gave me a choice. Serve them, or lose everyone I loved." His voice cracked for the first time. "I've been their prisoner ever since." I stared into his eyes. For the first time, I didn't see a traitor. I saw a broken man. Before I could respond, the hidden speakers inside the library crackled to life. A calm, distorted voice echoed through the room. "Agent Brooks, you've served your purpose." Brooks froze. His face turned pale. "No." A loud click echoed from somewhere inside the walls. Brooks looked up in horror. "They planted explosives. Run!" The bookshelf behind me suddenly slid open, revealing a narrow stone passage. Brooks shoved me toward it. "Go!" "What about you?" "I'll hold the door." "I'm not leaving you." "You don't have a choice." The countdown alarm began blaring. 30 seconds. I hesitated. Brooks reached into his pocket and handed me a small bronze key engraved with a black phoenix. "This opens the underground archive. It's beneath the manor chapel. Only this key can unlock it." The timer reached 20 seconds. Brooks smiled sadly. "Tell Emily. I'm sorry." The hidden passage began closing. I took one last look at him. He nodded. "Finish what your father started." The stone door sealed shut between us. I ran through the dark tunnel as fast as I could. Behind me, a massive explosion shook the manor. The tunnel collapsed in several places. Dust and broken stone filled the air. When I finally crawled out through another hidden exit, I found myself standing behind the old chapel at the edge of the estate. Blackwood Manor was burning. Flames rose into the night sky. Brooks was gone, or so I believed. As I caught my breath, I noticed fresh footprints leading toward the chapel. Someone else had survived. On the chapel door, a single message had been carved into the wood with a knife. The founder is waiting. A cold wind swept through the graveyard. I gripped the bronze key tightly. The final truth was only one door away. The chapel door groaned as I pushed it open. A wave of cold air rushed past me. The building had been abandoned for decades. Broken wooden pews were covered in dust. Moonlight streamed through shattered stained glass windows, painting strange colors across the stone floor. Everything was silent. Too silent. I walked slowly toward the old altar. Remembering Brooks' final words, I took out the bronze key. There was no visible lock. I searched carefully until my fingers brushed against a small phoenix-shaped carving beneath the altar. I inserted the key. Click! The entire altar began to move. Ancient gears rumbled beneath the floor. A hidden staircase slowly appeared, leading deep underground. Taking a deep breath, I switched on my flashlight and descended into the darkness. The stairs seemed endless. With every step, the air grew colder. Finally, I reached a massive steel door. Above it, engraved in faded gold letters, were the words, "The Archive of the Black Phoenix." My pulse quickened. This was the place my father had died trying to protect. I unlocked the door. It opened with a deafening metallic groan. Inside, I found rows of towering shelves filled with leather-bound files. Thousands of them. Each file carried the name of a politician, judge, military officer, billionaire, or corporate executive. Every powerful person connected to the Black Phoenix was recorded here. In the center of the room stood a large wooden table. On it rested a single black folder. Unlike the others, it had no name. Only one word. Founder. As I reached for it, a familiar voice echoed behind me. "I knew you would come." I spun around. Standing in the doorway was Agent Daniel Brooks. His clothes were burned. Blood covered one side of his face. But he was alive. "You're alive!" He gave a tired smile. "Barely. I escaped through another tunnel." Before I could speak again, he looked at the folder. "Don't open it." "Why?" "Because once you know the truth, your life will never be the same." Ignoring his warning, I slowly opened the folder. Inside was a birth certificate. The name printed on it made my entire world collapse. My name. My own birth certificate. But the father listed on the document wasn't my father. It was someone else. The space beneath read, "Father, Jonathan Blackwood." I stared at Brooks in disbelief. "Who is Jonathan Blackwood?" Brooks closed his eyes. "The founder." I couldn't breathe. "No, that's impossible." Brooks nodded sadly. "Your parents didn't hide you from the Black Phoenix. They rescued you from it." Before I could process those words, a slow clap echoed through the archive. The lights flickered. From the shadows, an elegant man in a black suit stepped forward. He appeared to be in his late 60s. His silver hair was neatly combed. His calm smile sent chills through my body. He looked directly into my eyes. "Welcome home, my son." The room fell silent. Every truth I had believed had just been shattered. "My son." The words echoed through the underground archive. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The man standing before me looked calm, confident, almost proud. His silver eyes never left mine. I tightened my grip on the pistol. "You're lying." A faint smile crossed his face. I expected that. He slowly reached into his jacket. Instinctively, I aimed my gun at his chest. "Don't move." Instead of pulling out a weapon, he removed an old photograph. He gently placed it on the table and stepped back. "Look at it." I hesitated. Then I lowered my eyes. The photograph showed a newborn baby wrapped in a white blanket. A young woman held the child in her arms. Standing beside her was the man in front of me. On the back of the photograph were 4 handwritten words. "Our son Elijah." My hands began to shake. Elijah. That was the name written on my original birth certificate. The name my parents had changed after rescuing me. "They stole you from me," the founder said quietly. "No," I replied. "They saved me from you." For the first time, anger flashed across his face. They lied to you. Your father betrayed me. He took you because he believed I had become a monster. Brooks stepped forward. You became one the day you ordered innocent families to be murdered. The founder laughed softly. Innocent? There are no innocent people. There are only those who survive, and those who don't. Suddenly, the archive doors slammed shut. Steel shutters covered every exit. A computerized voice echoed through the chamber. Security lockdown activated. Red warning lights flashed across the walls. The founder calmly pressed a button on his watch. Hidden compartments opened all around the archive. Armed guards poured into the room. More than 20 of them. Every one wearing the Black Phoenix emblem. There is no escape, the founder said. You have one final choice. He pointed toward me. Join me. The Black Phoenix belongs to you. You were born to lead it. I looked around the room. Every exit was blocked. Emily was still missing. Brooks had only a few bullets left. It seemed impossible. Then I remembered the map my father had hidden inside the wooden box. I quickly unfolded it. There, beneath the archive, was another passage. A forgotten emergency tunnel leading directly to the sea cliffs. The founder noticed the map. His calm expression disappeared. Take it from him. The guards charged toward us. Gunfire exploded through the archive. Brooks returned fire, dropping 2 guards before diving behind a stone pillar. I grabbed the black folder marked founder and the map. The emergency tunnel entrance was only a few feet away. But before I could reach it, a familiar voice echoed from one of the security monitors mounted on the wall. Don't shoot! Every head turned. The screen flickered to life. Emily appeared. She was alive, but she was tied to a chair inside a dark warehouse. A masked guard held a gun against her head. She looked directly into the camera. Her voice trembled. Don't listen to him. No matter what happens. Don't give them the archive. The founder smiled coldly. You have exactly 1 hour. Bring me the archive, or your sister dies. The screen went black. Silence filled the underground chamber. The final battle had begun. And this time, the price of failure was Emily's life. Emily's terrified face disappeared from the screen. The archive fell silent. Only the flashing red emergency lights remained. The founder smiled as if he had already won. You have 1 hour, he said calmly. Bring me the archive, or your sister dies. I looked at Brooks. Without saying a word, he understood. We weren't going to surrender. We were going to fight. Using the secret tunnel shown on my father's map, Brooks and I escaped the underground archive just before dozens of Black Phoenix guards surrounded the room. The tunnel led beneath the cliffs and ended near an abandoned shipping dock. Several cargo containers stood in the darkness. One of them matched the number shown behind Emily in the video. Container 47. This has to be it, Brooks whispered. We moved silently between the containers. Rain poured heavily. The sound of crashing waves helped hide our footsteps. Suddenly, 2 armed guards appeared around the corner. Brooks quickly grabbed one from behind while I tackled the other to the ground. Within seconds, both men were unconscious. We took their radios and continued forward. At the end of the dock stood a large warehouse surrounded by black SUVs. More than 30 guards protected the building. They're expecting us, Brooks said. They're expecting 1 man, I replied. They're not expecting a family. From inside my jacket, I removed the silver cross my mother had left me. Hidden inside was a tiny transmitter. Brooks smiled. So that's what your father was protecting. I pressed the hidden button. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, in the distance, helicopters, police sirens, military vehicles. Brooks laughed. Your father sent the evidence to the authorities years ago. The transmitter was the final activation key. The founder had no idea that the truth had already been delivered. The authorities were coming. But Emily didn't have time to wait. We entered the warehouse through a broken side window. The building was dark. Rows of wooden crates created a maze. Voices echoed from somewhere ahead. Carefully, we moved deeper inside. Then we saw her. Emily was tied to a steel chair beneath a single hanging light. She looked exhausted, but alive. Before I could reach her, the warehouse lights suddenly switched on. More than 50 armed guards surrounded us. Slowly, the founder stepped out of the shadows. He applauded. I knew you would come. He looked at Emily. You inherited your father's courage. Then he looked at me. And you inherited my stubbornness. He raised his hand. Every guard aimed their weapon at us. Outside, the sound of helicopters grew louder. The final battle was only moments away. The founder smiled one last time. Let's see whose family survives tonight. At that exact moment, the warehouse roof exploded inward. Federal helicopters broke through the glass ceiling. Ropes dropped from the sky as heavily armed tactical officers descended into the building. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Chaos consumed the warehouse. The war for the Black Phoenix had finally begun. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Bullets ripped through wooden crates. Glass shattered from every direction. Federal agents exchanged fire with the Black Phoenix guards as smoke filled the enormous building. I dove behind a stack of cargo boxes, firing only when I had a clear shot. Agent Brooks fought beside me, directing the tactical team through his radio. North entrance secured. Snipers on the roof. Move! Move! The founder remained strangely calm. Standing on the second-floor walkway, he watched the battle unfold like a man watching a game he had already won. He slowly picked up a microphone. "You still don't understand," he announced. "You can arrest my soldiers. You can destroy my empire, but you can never destroy the idea behind it." His voice echoed through the warehouse. Power always finds a new owner. I ignored him and fought my way toward Emily. 2 guards blocked my path. One rushed at me with a knife. I sidestepped his attack and knocked him unconscious with the butt of my pistol. The second guard opened fire. Before the bullets could reach me, Brooks tackled him to the ground. "Go!" Brooks shouted. "I'll cover you." I sprinted toward Emily. Her hands were tied behind the steel chair. "Hurry!" she cried. I cut the ropes with the guard's knife. She threw her arms around me. For the first time in years, my sister was finally free, but our reunion lasted only seconds. A loud explosion shook the warehouse. The founder had activated another hidden charge. Steel beams crashed from the ceiling. The building began to collapse. People screamed as dust and flames spread through the warehouse. The founder slowly walked toward a waiting armored vehicle parked inside the loading bay. He intended to escape. "No!" I shouted. I chased after him. Ignoring the collapsing roof, I reached the loading bay just as he climbed into the driver's seat. He looked at me through the windshield and smiled. "You've inherited your father's courage, but not his wisdom." He started the engine. The armored vehicle roared forward. Without thinking, I jumped onto the side of the moving truck. I grabbed the mirror with one hand and climbed onto the roof. The vehicle burst through the warehouse doors and sped into the storm. Rain lashed against my face. The truck raced along the cliffside highway overlooking the ocean. The founder swerved violently, trying to throw me off. I smashed my fist through the sunroof. He grabbed my arm. We struggled as the truck sped closer and closer to the edge of the cliffs. Behind us, federal helicopters pursued from the sky. Police vehicles closed in from the road. The founder laughed. "If I fall, you fall with me." He jerked the steering wheel sharply. The truck smashed through the roadside barrier. For one terrifying second, the entire vehicle hung over the edge of the cliff. Time seemed to stop. Then, the truck plunged toward the crashing waves below. At the last possible moment, I grabbed a rescue rope hanging from one of the helicopters. Strong hands pulled me upward. Below me, the armored truck disappeared into the dark ocean with a massive splash. The founder was gone, or so everyone believed. As I looked down into the endless black water, I noticed something. The driver's door had opened before the truck sank. But there was no body. The founder had vanished. Once again, the battle was over. But the hunt was not. The storm finally passed. 3 days later, the world watched as every major news channel reported the fall of the Black Phoenix. Hundreds of secret files from the underground archive were released to the authorities. Corrupt politicians, judges, business tycoons, military officers. One by one, they were arrested. The organization that had ruled from the shadows for more than a century had finally collapsed. Or so the world believed. Emily and I stood side by side at our parents' graves. For the first time in 20 years, we weren't carrying anger. We weren't carrying fear. Only peace. I placed my father's old pocket watch on the grave. It had stopped at 11:47 p.m. the night our family was torn apart. Emily gently held my hand. "We kept our promise," she whispered. "They can finally rest." A gentle breeze swept through the cemetery. For the first time since I was a child, The silence felt comforting instead of terrifying. A week later, Agent Brooks received the highest civilian honor for exposing the Black Phoenix. During the ceremony, he quietly handed me a sealed envelope. "I found this hidden inside your father's journal," he said. "I think he wanted you to have it after everything was over." When I returned home, I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. It read, "My son, if you are reading this, then you survived. I always believed you would. Revenge can keep a man alive, but forgiveness allows him to live. Do not spend the rest of your life chasing ghosts the way I did. Protect your sister. Build the life we never had. That will be your greatest victory. I love you, Dad." Tears filled my eyes. For 20 years, I had lived for revenge. Now, I finally understood what my father had truly wanted. Not vengeance. Freedom. Months passed. Emily opened a small bookstore near the coast. I helped veterans and victims of violent crime rebuild their lives through a charitable foundation created in my parents' names. For the first time, life felt normal. Until one rainy evening. As I was closing the bookstore, I noticed a small package resting outside the front door. No sender, no address, only my name. My heartbeat quickened. Slowly I opened it. Inside was an old Black Phoenix ring, the same kind worn by every member of the organization. There was also a folded note. Only one sentence was written. "The ashes never die." A cold chill ran down my spine. I looked across the empty street. A man in a black coat stood beneath a flickering streetlight. His face was hidden beneath a hat. He slowly tipped it toward me, then disappeared into the darkness. I smiled faintly, not because I wasn't afraid, but because I finally understood something. Evil may rise again. Secrets may return. Darkness may never disappear completely, but neither does courage. I closed the box, locked the bookstore, and walked home beside my sister. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Because this time, we were no longer running from the past. We were ready for the future. The end.